We want to welcome you back to session 2 of One Day Seminary, and we are so thankful for all of you who are here, and we're very, very excited about the study of theological anthropology. And this session deals with the soul, the body, soul, and spirit. Soul, of course, being the mind, will, and emotions of man. And we're very, very delighted to have with us Richie Allen and Brittany. Brittany is a licensed therapist, and we thank God for her beneficial grace that is given to the Church of Jesus Christ and all she does to help people and minister to people. And so we're exceptionally delighted and honored to have her and glean from her wisdom this morning. And so they're going to do a session together with us and lead us into a discovery and a discussion of some things that are very pertinent to our time. More people are suffering in their soul right now than ever before because of all that we've been through as a culture and a society. So we want to talk about those things and unwrap those things. And as at the conclusion of their discussion, we'll open it up and have a time of question and answers. So thank you for being here. Yeah. Make yourself at home.
I'm excited about it. So I had to look up the word anthropology. I know what theological is. It took me a while to remember what anthropology was. No, we're excited about this. We are going to talk a little bit about the soul and the health of the soul. And so, but first of all, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Richie. I've been in ministry longer than I want to admit. Full-time ministry since I was 16 years old. And so my father was a pastor, had a lot of ministry experience and a lot of pastoral experience. And in that process, for me, I've also learned a lot about soul health. As obviously we should, but the last 5 years particularly for my life has been like a master class in soul health. And so, but I also have my friend Brittany here today, and Brittany, a licensed professional counselor. I'll let her tell you a little bit more about her, but I've known her for years and years, and she is special. She's anointed. She's a counselor, but she's a Christian counselor, and she has a lot of theological depth. And so I'm really excited about having you here as well. So Brittany, tell them a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, thank you guys so much for having me. Also, thank you for being here today. I think it speaks very highly of you that you're here on a Saturday. There is a million other things that you could be doing right now. And the fact that you're here to sharpen yourself and to work on yourself to be better for every area that you are in, I think that that's amazing. So kudos to you all. But yeah, my name's Brittany. I'm an LPC. I say a lot, by the way, so that's just going to be there.
Let's deal with it.
But so I currently have a private practice, which I'm very excited about. The name of my private practice is Authentic Counseling. I believe God gave me that name because that is what I try to do in every area. I'm just real. I'm just me. So that's what you're going to get today. But so I do private practice. I'm also a high school counselor. So I've worked in the public school system. This is my 10th year. So that gives me I've dealt with a lot of different kinds of people. I've worked in elementary and high school level. So it's been really neat to work with the little kids and the big kids, the parents, the families, through all of that. And now I get to do private practice, which I love. I'm married to a worship pastor. And I lead worship with him on Sundays. So that is a huge part of my life as well. So I have a lot of different, I guess, areas of experience that I think have shaped me into who I am. I've been volunteering, serving, working. It's looked different in ministry since I was about 16 years old. So I'm not currently on staff at a church, but basically because my husband is. So we do a lot together, which I love. But I'm really excited to be with you guys here today and to have this conversation. I'm used to a therapy setting, so I love that setting where I get to be across from someone navigating things with them. So this is similar, And we both kind of like the fact that we're here with being able to talk with each other.
Yeah.
But today we're going to talk about, the title of our conversation today is It's Not Business as Usual. When I flipped through the syllabus and I saw the lengthy syllabi of the other speakers, I was like, oh my, mine's very short and to the point, but that's okay. We're gonna, that's all right. But I think what we are going to talk about today is very relevant to wherever you are, whomever you are. It could relate to ministry staff. It can relate to moms, dads, daughters, sons, husbands, wives. I mean, we're all in this. And so that kind of leads me to our first slide today. But, well, before we do that, today's discussion, what we're going to be doing is we're going to talk about, we picked 5. There's so many more than 5 issues right now, but we chose 5 to focus on today. Yeah. Issues, challenges, kind of things that we're all navigating right now together. You look at someone and, we look at each other here and, we're smiling, we're here, we have our notebooks out and our pens, but we're all experiencing some stuff right now. We've been walking through some stuff. Yeah. So
2020, right?
You guys, like I said, being here, smiling, y'all are dressed. We don't have sweats on. Good job, everybody. If you have sweats, that's totally fine too. I kind of wish I had sweats on. But, and then I don't ever like to leave a conversation. We can talk about problems, and that's important sometimes to have awareness. But to bring some solutions and some healthy approaches to things is really important. So we're not going to bear with us the first half. We will bring light and hope at the end. So it might feel a little bit like at first, but it'll get better. And the last thing I think might be the most important, but it says to exercise honest, transparent self-reflection in order to implement this stuff in daily life. And that's the hard part, but worth it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so one of the things that I would like to just at the very beginning just kind of address is that if you've been in church a long time, like I have, sometimes there's a misunderstanding of therapy and counseling. And so I know growing up, that was kind of frowned on, and it was almost as if you didn't have faith if you had to go to a therapist. Well, God, just pray through. That's what I was. You just need to pray through, and so. But there is a lot to be said. Even the Bible says, in the multitude of counsel, there is safety. Yeah. And so when you look at a counselor, like a licensed professional counselor or an LMFT or any of those kinds of things, with psychiatrists, psychologists, any of those, what you'll find is that there is knowledge that they have had access to that you don't have access to. Mm-hmm. And that is what wisdom is knowledge that is applied. And so they have a lot of knowledge that they've had access to and a lot of wisdom because they've applied it with people that they've worked with. So if you can find a counselor, specifically, I prefer to have a Christian counselor. You don't have to. I'm not saying you have to have that. I prefer to have that because a lot of the time they can take the cognitive behavioral therapy or the other kinds of therapies that are available, and they can tie that to the scripture so that we're making sure that we are biblically sound in the things that we do. So there is a place for therapy, and actually I encourage it. I've had a therapist for years, and I go weekly, have conversations weekly, and it's the best thing I've ever done for my soul health. Yeah. So having said that, let's jump right into the collective trauma.
Yeah, for sure. So collective trauma is what this year is. It's interesting. A lot of times we are hesitant to call things trauma, especially for ourselves. A lot of times for other people, we can say, oh, that must have been so traumatic for you. When it comes to things with ourselves, it's like, oh, but it wasn't that bad. Other people have it worse than me. But collective trauma is extraordinary in that not only can it bring distress and negative consequences to individuals, but it can also change the entire fabric of a community. In fact, collective trauma can impact relationships, alter policies and governmental processes, and alter the way that a society functions and even change social norms. I mean, how true is all of that for what we've experienced?
We have seen that this year.
Very much so. Yeah, I thought that that's a really good kind of way to define what we're dealing with here. And so the next slide, trauma responses, and this is important to know, and I love the first session so much. I love that that's a priority here in this house. That's amazing. But our bodies are, they hold everything, good, bad, ugly, all the things. And it says, when trauma hits, it can leave our bodies and minds struggling to process and cope. Traumatic experiences can overwhelm the ordinary human adaptations to life. So if you found yourself having a little bit of a hard time finding your groove, that's okay. That's actually normal.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of just defining where we are. And I'm not saying that everyone's just in this traumatic place that you can't function, but we have experienced things I think it's important to acknowledge. So we're going to start by, like I said, we took 5 things, tried to generalize, and we're not going to go, honestly, a lot of these things could be sessions in and of themselves. I was thinking about that when I was reading it today. It's kind of a lot of content. So it might feel like we're brushing over some things, but yeah, so we're just going to go for it.
Yeah.
But,
and before we do, I just want to make, if you have questions while we're talking, something strikes you and you have a question, write it down. We are going to take some time with Q&A at the end, so we can talk a little bit more in more specifics about any areas that you might be wanting to address.
Yeah.
So, all right, go for it.
Yeah, so to start, I put this one first, that pre-existing issues are magnified right now. I don't know about you, but I wasn't issue-free before COVID-19. There were things I was working on and working through, you know? And one thing I've learned, especially, so I work at a high school, and there's kids right now that are, you know, I'm sure some of you guys have kids, and Lord bless you, navigating education since March. It's crazy. But we have kids that are remote learners. We have kids that are in-person learners. We had some flipping back and forth for various reasons. But one thing I've noticed is that my kids that struggled with anxiety and depression before this, y'all, it's tough right now. It's magnified right now. Insecurity, it's magnified. Marital issues, magnified. Addiction, magnified. So it's not abnormal. There's nothing wrong with you if you're experiencing that, but it's just the nature of what we're walking through. It's new to all of us. None of us have been in this before. So that is definitely a thing. So I think it's important to know and not be surprised by realizing that and also it might not be with you, but people that you are dealing with, whether in your family or at your job or you know, in church or anything like that, having that in mind.
And I would just say one of the reasons why it's magnified too is because we've seen a drop off in church attendance. We've seen a drop off in people really just in their walk with God during this time. And I know there's a lot of people that say, "Oh, my walk with God has gotten better this year," and I'm going, how'd that happen? For the most part, it's been an uphill battle spiritually. And so, and forsaking not the assembling of yourselves together as a manner of some is, when we got shut down and the churches got shut down, it affected things in the spirit world. And the spiritual aspect of that, when there was a spiritual depression, a spiritual dip in our culture, then these addictions and marital issues and depression and anxiety have risen more to the top because they haven't been suppressed by the Spirit and by prayer and the things that we typically will do. So that's why we've seen a bump in that in addition to other reasons, but that's a big part of the reason why we've seen that. Yeah. So you said anxiety right now 3 times higher, depression is 4 times higher than 2019. Divorce increased by 34%. That's crazy. This year. So this is a massive amount, and I mean, if you're married, you probably have experienced more friction this year than you ever have before. And so now, if you haven't, come teach the class, please.
Talk to us about how to do that.
But anyway, so the grief.
Yeah. So that's that. Like I said, this will get lighter, I promise. But grief is next, and this one is really big. I work with a lady who is an LPC as well, and she specializes in grief. As LPCs, you really can see any kind of client, so I can see anyone. There's different areas that I feel more specialized in, for example. But my friend that I work with is grief is her thing. She's been through a lot of it herself, which is why. But she's kind of schooled me a lot on this, and she said that, well, we all know grief is a response to loss, okay? We often, I think, though, view grief very black and white. It's like, oh, someone died, that's when we grieve. A really bad divorce happened, that's when we grieve. Someone gets a really severe diagnosis or some kind of challenging diagnosis, that's when we grieve. But actually, there's 43 research-based types of loss. There's actually more than 43. But I just want everybody to take a moment, think about things that have been lost this year. Every single person in this room has experienced some type of loss. And I think it's important to acknowledge and let yourself feel that. It's also okay that someone else's, sometimes we don't let ourselves feel it because someone else has it worse. Not all of us have lost a family member specifically to COVID. So if you lost your job in that time, then you might say, oh, well, at least none of my family passed away.
And so you almost feel guilty
Yeah.
for acknowledging that there is a loss.
Right.
Just because yours isn't seemingly as great as someone else's.
Right.
But the truth of the matter is, and you've heard this old adage before, everybody's hell is hot.
Oh, that's
So everybody is dealing with something, and internally, it's bothering you just as much as somebody else's seemingly greater loss is bothering them if you haven't had those greater losses. So it's everybody's hell is hot. So
right.
Continue.
And your brain and your body is feeling your loss. It's not feeling the person down the roads, and it's responding in that way. So acknowledging that is really important, and knowing that we all have felt, and it's not just one area, it's so many areas. Even, trips that you didn't get to go on, that's traditions that you're missing out on. Even as we approach the holidays, for some people, those are looking different. Even losses that, anniversaries coming up of loss are going to feel harder this year, probably, than previous years. So also, I think that we like to put things in neat categories. Compartmentalization helps us feel in control. It helps us feel in charge, which is great. I mean, control is fine in moderation, yeah. But sometimes our grief doesn't fit into one single one. It spills over into a lot of different file folders. That's how I visualize it. But yeah, so that's one of them. The next one I'm gonna toss off to you. I feel like you speak on this one really great.
And she talked about we like to have control, right? We like to feel in control. And so the next one is powerlessness. That's our third need, our third issue that we're really dealing with right now is powerlessness. There's a strong need. There's a strong need to be in control of outcomes, and this happens more often in certain personality types. So if you know anything about the Enneagram, I'm a big proponent of the Enneagram. It's not some weird astrological, hoodoo voodoo. It's not that. It's actually biblically based, and it comes from Enneagram's basis is back from the Desert Fathers and some of the monastic traditions. So it is based in Christianity. And there's 9 personality types on the Enneagram, 1 through 9. I specifically am a 1, which is perfectionist is kind of one way of putting it. The other one is a reformer or improver. And so I see things that are wrong all the time. That's all I see. I walk in a room and I go, there's something on that chair over there. There's the light, this light's not on. This, so that's my nature, right? But one of those things about a 1 for me is I like to be in control. I like to make sure that I have control over my situation. So I always like to have options. And so, what if this doesn't work? I need a plan B. So I need to have that in my head to be able to feel confident and comfortable in a situation. Not everybody feels that way. Some people are just cool with whatever. But so for certain personality types, there's a strong need to be in control, and mine is that's one of mine. And also, there's a difference in genders as well. For men, powerlessness poses a challenge to their self-esteem. As a result of cultural and societal expectations on men, and just as it's gone, they take it as a blow to their self-esteem if they cannot control an outcome. And so if an outcome is uncontrollable, then it affects their self-esteem. For women, powerlessness poses more of a challenge to their need for security. So there's the difference between self-esteem and security. So women typically have a stronger need for security than men do in that gender area. And so powerlessness, when you are powerless to change an outcome, it affects your sense of security as a woman. And then the lack of ability to control the outcome of a situation leads in general. So if you can't control what's going on, it's going to lead you to a sense of hopelessness, inadequacy, and even on the deeper end, self-loathing. So you really begin it really begins to affect your self-esteem that you cannot control the outcome. So you're hopeless, you're dealing with feelings of inadequacy and self-loathing. So then what's the fourth one now?
Yeah, so the next one, I don't think we could talk about this year without mentioning this, but it's the divisive nature of today's views and issues and really everything that's going on. I would just say divisive comes to mind. Polarized, everything is so polarized. Mm-hmm. Stuff that maybe had a middle or gray area before, people are choosing one side or the other. And I'm not saying that there aren't valid reasons for that, but it's just acknowledging that that is very much a part of where we are today. Mm-hmm. If you're in any kind of leadership role, that's really tough right now. Pastors, that's so tough right now. Mm. Anywhere where your opinion, when it comes out of your mouth, a lot of people are going to hear it, that's tough right now. Mm-hmm. Well, we all have, a lot of us have social media. I'm actually currently on a social media break. I haven't done that in a while, but it's really peaceful. Go figure. But, the different things with the virus, with our current election that just happened, with racism, with even down to as we progress in this pandemic, there's a lot of different ways that people are viewing it. And I think there's a lot of judgments that are taking place based on that. And so I don't have the answer I wish I had this nice thing to give you to say how to deal with this right here. I don't. I think that looking at how Jesus dealt with conflict is really helpful. And later when we talk about boundaries, there's a really great kind of view about how Jesus was with it. But again, I just think that just loving people is still really important.
Absolutely. I would just say to you that Satan's greatest weapon against the church is not sin. It's disunity. Yeah. And if he can divide us, he's won. Yeah. Sin is a distraction. Yeah. Disunity is destruction. And so if we're not careful, a church unified in love and forgiveness is the most powerful weapon against the enemy. Yeah. But if we become divided as a result of these things, then we've lost the battle. And so the divisive nature of today's views, that's right on being a top 5 issue.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, and then the last one?
Yeah, so the last one that we'll talk about today is isolation. And that's getting a little bit better. But for some of us, there are still people that I know of, even like at our church, for example. You guys are here today, but there are a lot of people joining online. Hey, online crew. And there's nothing wrong with joining online, but it's just there are still people who, for a multitude of reasons, their reality is still very isolated. I would encourage you today, if you know someone in your circle that is their reality, reach out to them. We've got to be really intentional. Not everyone's life has returned to a sense of normalcy. Mm-hmm. And it's easy because a lot of ours has, it's still not normal how it was a year ago at this time, but it's a little bit better. We can be here today. We couldn't do that a few months ago, but we are made for connection. Yes. So many things can be healed with connection. Mm-hmm. So many things can be just like continue to stay healthy when there's connection in your life. Mm-hmm. That's why in the Bible it says, do not forsake the assembling of yourselves together. Jesus knew, don't Don't stop being around each other.
Yeah.
That's why when James was talking, he said, find a group that's running. Because you might not want to run by yourself, but if there's a group that's like going to run with you or whatever it might be, I hate running, but something else like that. I'll ride bikes with a group or something like that.
Well, and in Acts chapter 4, well, 2, if I can't remember what the chapter is, the apostles, there's 4 things that they talk about. That they continue in the apostles' doctrine and in fellowship and in breaking in bread and in prayer.
Yeah.
Those 4 things. Out of those 4 things, 2 of them are connection with other people. Breaking of bread, fellowship. Those 2 things. So there is a strong connection, even in the church, there is a strong need to be connected. So we can't forsake that.
Yeah.
We absolutely can't forsake
Right. And when there's things that force us to forsake it, like right now, the health issues are serious. I have a friend of mine who her immune system is completely compromised, and she hasn't left her house since March. She has 4 kids. Y'all, her life is stressful and hard still. And so it's important that whoever those people are, whether it's an elderly person in your family that can't leave, or people that are hospitalized for other reasons, or there's so many things. But I think intentionality, even because we can get busy in our own lives and busy in our own schedules. And so I know for me, I have to write in my planner to reach out to people. And that might seem weird, but I do that. I write down in my planner to send someone that I know that I need to connect with that's struggling with isolation a text. And that's been really helpful, just an intentional way to approach that.
Yep.
So I read somewhere that it's been called the double pandemic of like isolation is it's really serious. So just addressing that. If it's not present in your life, being aware of who is still dealing with that and helping where you can. Because even just connection with one person, that one connection can go such a long way for that person in their day. So I would encourage you to be intentional about that moving forward.
Absolutely.
So now.
Now what?
Now what? And this is a Brene Brown quote. If you're familiar with any of Brene Brown's work, she's a psychologist in the field of mental health and talks a lot about vulnerability and leadership. But this quote says that this pandemic experience is a massive experiment in collective vulnerability. We can be our worst selves when we're afraid, or our very best, bravest selves. In the context of fear and vulnerability, there is often very little in between, because when we are uncertain and afraid, our default is self-protection. We don't have to be scary when we're scared. Let's choose awkward, brave, and kind, and let's choose each other.
That's good.
I like that.
That's so good.
So the next thing that we're going to talk about is now what? And like I said, I never like to just talk about problems and say, well, it's real bad right now, isn't it? So in this part, we're going to incorporate some scripture because we have to, that has to be a part of our life, right, to be in the best place that we can be. And the latter part of the title of this was to how to navigate this healthily. And we can't do that without Jesus and without the Word of God. It's impossible. And that's what I love about therapy and counseling and Christian therapy and counseling, is that it incorporates practical things you can do, but also you can't do this without Jesus.
Right.
You can, but it's not fun at all, not fulfilling.
Exactly.
So I love this scripture. 1 Peter 1:13 says, therefore with minds that are alert and fully sober, set your hope on the grace to be brought to you when Jesus Christ is revealed at his coming.
That's good.
I love that we have hope, y'all. No matter what else is going on around us, that's what I keep telling myself. And when that anxiety tries to creep up, there's practical things for anxiety, but there's also that thing that I know that no matter what, there is hope in Jesus every day, all day.
Absolutely.
So I love that verse.
This is a seminar. You're not supposed to be preaching.
I know I'm about to. I need to just go get on the keys. Yeah. So I think, the first thing, and I would venture to say that it might be one of the most important, and it's challenging, it's hard, but it says that we need to have a willingness to adjust and have flexibility in areas that it may not have been before. So I want you to think on your life right now and think about, especially if you're in leadership of any kind, and if you're not in leadership of any kind, you're here today, so that means that you are a leader. You're a leader somewhere. Even if you might not have this audience of people that you speak to every week, but your family, if you have family members in your house, they're looking at you to lead them in some way at your job and things like that. So especially in a church setting, I know that things have had to be done totally different.
100%. Yeah. Church staffs have had to pivot completely.
Yeah.
From a normal weekend experience to online only.
Yeah,
And
totally different.
that's a completely different ballgame. Everything changes.
Yeah.
So you do have to be flexible. Flexibility is a value now more than ever.
Yes.
Is flexibility. So
Well, and something that I was going to say that I've heard a lot of people say in my sessions and even at work, it's hard for teachers and educators right now, but wishing for the old normal. Well, I just want it to be like it was before. You know, I just want it to be. I want it to be how it was before all this. And you guys, I don't know if we're going to have that again. And I think it's important for us to, instead of dwelling on that and putting all our energy to wishing for that, it's kind of like when something happened and it's over and you just keep wishing for it to, you're just going to spin your wheels and be in a stuck place. And if you can shift your mind to embracing what God has for us moving forward. And it hasn't been all bad things that have come from this. There's been some really cool things that have happened in this time with, I know churches that have been online and ways that creative ways they've been able to reach and connect with people. But all of that to say that I think it's important to recognize systems that are no longer serving you.
Yeah, that's good.
Be willing to do things differently. And this might be going against cultural norms for you. Yeah. It's going against things that, and just you might be the person that says, hey, what about this? And the room looks at you like you're crazy, but it might be that thing that shifts something.
This is a perfect time to hit the reset button. Yeah. It really is. If we can we can always look, the way that we frame things is everything. So you can look at something being a loss, or you can look at it as a blessing in disguise. And you have a choice there. For example, in Ezra chapter 3, the children of Israel had just been brought back by King Cyrus. He had let them back into the promised land. And they had built, Solomon's temple had been destroyed. They were in exile. They were brought back out of exile. They came back, and they began to rebuild the temple. And they laid the foundation of the new temple. However, there were people that lifted up their voice in mourning because they remembered Solomon's temple. They remembered that that tabernacle that was more grandiose. It was bigger. It was more beautiful. All of that. And this new foundation wasn't nearly as big, and it wasn't going to look like the old way. But that had been destroyed. And the vast majority of the children of Israel actually lifted up their voice and in victory and shouted over it, because so we have a choice here, is what I'm saying, is that we can either grieve what was, or we can celebrate what is and what's coming. So we have that choice. So it's very, very important that we learn to reframe how we see loss and how we see lack and how we see desolation. I posted something the other day. There's a blessing in desolation. That if we can recognize it, rather than seeing it as a loss, we see it as this is another opportunity for us to learn something new, another opportunity for us to go into a different season. And so I think it's very, very important that we do that in this season. And we say, okay, let's reframe this. All the stuff that we're dealing with right now, all of it, this is a great opportunity for us to hit reset. It can either be horrible, I hate that this is the way life is, or we can say, hey, let's reset and do exactly what she said, and that is look at the things that you've been doing and say, what wasn't really working but that we were just doing because it was the norm. Now we can redo it. Yeah. And we can look at it from a completely different perspective.
Yeah.
Okay.
The next one, I feel like I could spend an hour or more on just by itself. Boundaries.
Boundaries, yeah.
We hear that word a lot, so I don't want it to be, but I really want it to be something that you can take and apply. But it's implementation of and sticking to boundaries. For you, for your family, your home, if you're here and you're a ministry leader, for yourself and your staff, because it is, I believe, your job, if you're leading people, to be aware of the people that you are shepherding. I believe that God gives us that responsibility. So one of the verses that we included here is Galatians 6, 1-6. I'll read it real quick, but it says, "Brothers, if anyone is caught in any transgression, you who are spiritual should restore him in a spirit of gentleness. Keep watch on yourself, lest you too be tempted. Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. For if anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. But let each one test his own work, and then his reason to boast will be in himself alone and not in his neighbor." And this is where boundaries come in. For each will have to bear his own load. So here's the deal. No one will do this for you. You have to do it. And I am someone who did not do this until I was older. And there was a lot of areas in my life that were very out of control. And implementing boundaries has created so much peace for my life that I wish that I had done this so much sooner. But the cool thing is that it's never too late, ever. You can wake up and say, I'm going to do it different today. And I love, Richie, write down this website. I didn't put it in here, y'all, but it's called soulshepherding.org. Soulshepherding.org. It is full of such good stuff. And it is from a ministry standpoint, but it can apply to anybody. But one of the things I took from that website, it says Jesus set boundaries. While Jesus lived on earth, he never walked on eggshells around people, worried about upsetting them, clung to them for approval, or pushed to get them to do what they should. Good boundaries help you care for others because you have a stable foundation to operate from and are not distracted or depleted by personal insecurities or blind spots. Jesus was self-aware, secure, solid, purposeful, and straightforward.
I like that. So let me just drop in on this. It's not selfish or unloving to have boundaries and take care of yourself. In fact, there's a massive difference between being responsible for someone and being responsible to them. And we cannot be responsible for someone else's response or someone else's issue. We can be responsible to them and provide them things that they may need to navigate whatever through that situation, but we cannot be responsible for them.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? There's a massive difference between those two things.
Yeah. And I think something that I do when I'm working with people and myself, because this is a constant assessment that you have to take. This isn't a thing you do one time. And I think it also looks different in different seasons of your life too.
Yeah.
So know that boundaries are going to be ever changing, and that's okay for you to do things differently at different times. But look at areas in your life where resentment is creeping up on the regular. Usually a boundary needs to be implemented there. Something needs to be tweaked there. It can even be something as little as when you walk by the sink and there's dishes every time and you're like, oh my gosh, am I the only one that sees those dishes there? But have you said anything to your partner about them helping you?
Pastor, what are you doing? Just keep looking forward, Pastor. Just don't turn around.
Yeah. I'm in the book, I think. Yeah.
Hey.
But I say that to say, even if it's something at work where you're getting asked to do the same thing and it's really stressing you out and it's filling your plate too much, and it could be a thing where you spoke up and said, hey, I actually have, and saying what you have going and say, adding this makes me feel very stressed and ineffective. Is there a way for me to not take this on right now? Can someone else? Anyway, a lot of times it's just speaking the words.
Yeah.
And usually when you speak the words in a, not a crazy way, preferably,
Right.
A lot of times we wait until we're so fed up, and that's when things just spew out, and that's when the fights happen and the heated disagreements. But I like one of the things I stole stuff from this website, y'all. I'm giving them credit right now, soulshepherding.org. But someone named William Martin said that ministry, and I believe that, and I'm not talking about just full-time staff, churchmen, all of us are ministers in our life.
Yeah.
We all have people that we are ministering to.
Yeah.
Okay? So all of you here are ministering in your life, and ministry begins with rest. If you fill your calendar with important appointments, you will have no time for God. If you fill your spare time with essential reading, you will starve your soul. If you fill your mind with worry about budgets, and financial things, the pains in your chest and ache in your shoulders will betray you. If you try to conform to the expectations of those around you, you will forever be their slave. Work a modest day, then step back and rest. This will keep you close to God.
Oh man! So I got to drop in on this. This is a thing. There's a reason why Sabbath is a command.
Yeah.
It's not an option. And one of the things that I've seen in my life, and I've seen all over the place, is that if you don't take a Sabbath and you don't honor the Sabbath and obey that, you will have to take a Sabbath.
Yeah.
It will be
It'll be
made.
forced.
It'll be forced on you one way or another. And I'm a living witness. I have a scar down my chest from open heart surgery, and that's because I just didn't take care of myself. I pushed. And if, like I said before, the last 5 years have been a master class for me. This is one of the things that I've learned is that, man, this is not an option. Sabbath is not an option. There's a reason, and a big part of the reason why Sabbath isn't just a day off, guys. It is a reminder to you. This is the point. The reason why he created is a reminder to you that when you take your hands off the wheel, things still go on.
Oh, that's good.
And that you are not essential to the process, that he's in control. And if you can get to that point and understand it, and it can only be understood through practice. You have to practice Sabbath.
Yes.
You have to. There's no choice. There's no way around that. So anyway, I could go for an hour on that right
I'm
there.
looking at the time. We're gonna keep
going.
We're gonna keep going. I think y'all get the point. But it's one of those things you have to be reminded of. And no, I love what he said about taking a Sabbath as a practice. Most of these approaches take practice. I don't know that we ever fully arrive here. It's just knowing that I'm going to get up and I'm going to intentionally incorporate this into how I do life. And when I do that, eventually a lot of these, like certain things with boundaries will become very second nature, and it won't feel near as difficult as it did the very first time you did it. I'm very much a people pleaser, so boundaries for me are hard because I don't like making people disappointed or sad. I like to keep them happy with me. You cannot keep everybody happy and have healthy boundaries, period.
No, you cannot.
So that's a fun lesson. But the next one, like I said, that could be a whole thing, but we'll keep going.
It's really hard for me to keep going.
It's good, I know.
That one will go.
It's good.
Keep going.
The next one, I went out of order, but that's okay. This one kind of goes along with what we were just talking about, but prioritizing support for you. A lot of times there are certain, again, phases of life, there are certain roles in life that we find and encourage support for everyone else but ourselves. So normalizing therapy, and I am a therapist, but y'all, I'm just gonna, and I won't go into this whole story, but I didn't get therapy until way later into my adult life when a lot of stuff, it was a public thing that went wrong in ministry, and I had to get support, and I wish I would have gotten that sooner. I wish that would have been encouraged sooner. And now this is what I'm doing now as a result of I just want to help people that didn't get the support, because looking back on my life, it would have been really cool to get some support sooner and really helpful. It's never too late though. Yep. And I always say that, and this is a shameless plug, and it's okay, but if you're breathing and if you've lived longer than 10 years of life, you probably need to talk through some things with a neutral person that can just provide support for you and help give you perspective that you just can't have on your own when you're in something. So another thing that I love is proactive instead of reactive. All of you guys are being proactive by being here today. I love that here there's a person over health and wellness. That's phenomenal. I wish that would catch wind everywhere. Yep. And so I think I'm in therapy myself, and I have to practice what I preach, and I have to go and work on my stuff because it's there. Yep. I hadn't been in a few years, and some things started coming up again, and it's one of those things where I thought I had dealt with it, but here it is. Yep. So just having it takes a lot of courage, and it's hard. Yep. But yeah, you can. One thing I wrote down is prioritizing your personal needs and not trying to please everyone around you. Recognizing when you're short, tired, and defensive. Recognize that and be willing to get support for yourself. A resentful leader a burnt out leader can do a lot of damage. It's a well-meaning place, but a lot of damage can be done. So especially if you're in leadership of any kind, it's your responsibility to take care of yourself. Like how we were talking about in the first session with your body and also your soul and your mind. So
There's a reason why they tell you to put your mask on first in the airplanes before you put it on your kid.
Oh, that's
because you can't help anybody if you're knocked out. So you gotta take care of yourself first so that you can help other people.
yeah, that's good.
We go back to 3.
Yeah, the next one, I went out of order. It's different here, but it's okay. The next one is to include people in your circle who view things differently, look different than you, and have different life experience to have a balanced and informed view of the issues of the day.
Oh, man. All right. So this is it can be touchy, but what good is a Christian who only associates with Christians?
Yeah.
What the scripture says, we are in the world but not of the world, but we get so busy thinking that we don't need to be of the world that we forget that we're supposed to be in the world.
Yeah.
And I think there's a vital piece that sometimes we miss, that we get in our own little bubble and we forget that there are people, number one, that need to hear the gospel.
Yeah.
And how can we witness to people that we don't interact with? And so having people who see things differently than you in your life is healthy from a spiritual level, because Jesus sat and ate with sinners, right? And even in his perfection, he had people who thought differently around him. And so I think from a Christian standpoint, we've got to remember, if the only people we're talking to are people who think exactly like us, we're not going to grow. Not in any way, shape, or form. So we've got to make sure. Proverbs 18:2 says, a fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion. And I'm afraid one of the things that social media has done for us is it's divided us even further into factions.
Yes.
And so we don't like what that person says, so we're going to unfollow them. And by the time it's all over with, we've got a Facebook feed full of people who think exactly like us and say exactly the same things that we say. So we're talking to each other. We're in an echo chamber, and nobody's getting better as a result of it. And we don't care about anybody else's opinions. We just care about our own. Romans 14:1-4 says, as for the one who is weak in faith, welcome him, but not to quarrel over opinions.
That's good.
One person believes he may eat anything, while the weak person eats only vegetables. Let not the one who eats despise the one who abstains, and let not the one who abstains pass judgment on the one who eats, for God has welcomed him. Who are you to pass judgment on the servant of another?
Wow.
It is before his own master that he stands or fails, and he will be upheld, for the Lord is able to make him stand. So it's important that we have people who are different in our lives. We've got to have that.
Yeah. And that ability to have a civil conversation and to walk away and be able to be like, hey, I love you still. I have family members that are not speaking to each other right now, my own family. And I'm like, guys, come on, you know? And I understand that things are super heated, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't be and that there's not reason for that. But recognizing that, I think that if we have people, and that's a thing that we regularly do, that we're surrounded by people that aren't just like us, it won't be so shocking when we hear a point of view that's very different than ours, on the complete other side than ourselves. And being secure in yourself enough and secure in your faith and knowing that it's okay that that person is saying that. It doesn't wreck or unravel anything for you. And also knowing that, and I think I put this down earlier, but I don't think that I said it, but y'all, as Christians and as being part of the church, we are on display right now. People are watching. How are we treating people? How are we responding to people? And Jesus was straightforward. I'm not saying to be like all just cower back. That's not what I'm saying. But recognizing that we have a responsibility to be Jesus to everyone.
Yes.
Not just a little certain people that are easy to be Jesus to. And I work with difficult people all day, and I have to tell myself this all day that, you know, this is not personal. You are a Christian person. You know, it can be hard.
Well, and the very basis of who God is love.
Yeah.
beyond everything else. And if we can recognize that people who think differently than us are on a journey,
Process.
and they're in a process, and they may not be at the same stage of the journey that you are at. Have grace for that,
Yeah.
and understand that you're probably not at the same stage as somebody else. And so there are things that you're learning and processing and beginning to understand now that you didn't understand 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And then there are people that are going to be around you that are going to be maybe a little bit behind in their understanding.
Yeah.
So have grace for that. Live in love. Don't worry so much about quarreling over opinions.
Yeah, that's good.
Romans 14.
Yeah, and seeking to understand. I
Yes.
like that.
Seek first to understand,
Yes.
not to be understood.
Yeah.
Right?
So the last one, and this encompasses everything, but grace, so much grace.
Yes.
I've seen this be a thing, and it's really nice. Especially, like I said before, I work at a school. It's so crazy right now with the things that we're juggling, and mistakes happen right now. Maybe a little more than usual. The volume is a little higher than normal. The call volume.
Yeah.
Gotta love when you get that message. But I appreciate when someone responds to me in grace. It is such a relief when I've messed something up and I have to go to them and say, hey, I'm really sorry. I made a mistake on this paperwork, or I'm sorry I didn't email you back in this time frame, whatever the thing I'm apologizing for is, because it's pretty much daily something different. But when someone responds to me with grace, and I don't know about you guys, but I have been, not just in COVID-19, but in other times in my life, I have been in scenarios where I needed grace from someone, and I'll never forget when someone extended that to me, ever.
Yeah.
It changes your life when someone does that when you need it. And so if you haven't ever been in a situation where you needed to be grace extended to you, that's nice. But
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah.
Good luck with
it
that.
probably will happen where you're in a time where you've really dropped the ball in whatever way, and someone says, hey, you know what? It's okay. And I'm actually, I was able to sit under Richie's leadership for some time, and I got to experience gracious leadership from him. And it changed my life, and I'm so thankful for that. So in Hebrews 4:16, and we're closing, I think we went right down to the time.
Right.
But it says,
Just
let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence. I'm so glad that we get to even do that, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. So God gives us grace all day, and so it's up to us, I think, to give grace to each other and exercise that.
Absolutely. To whom much is given, much is required.
Yeah.
Right? Awesome. That's great. So let's open it up a little bit, and let's talk a little bit about if there's some more practical things that we would want to talk about.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Let me just go back to one thing, and then we'll have Q&A, Pastor. And do you want to run the Q&A? How do you want to do it? That's fine. Just to go back to the Sabbath thing, because I'm going to go.
You're
back
not
to
done
that.
with it.
I'm not done with that. I'm not done with that. To go back to the Sabbath thing, some practical advice on that is that sometimes life just is busy, right? It's just crazy,
Right.
and it's really hard to find that balance. Prioritizing that, if it's not on your calendar, it's not important to you. And so if you've got a calendar and Sabbath is not written down on your calendar, then it's not important enough. So prioritize writing it on your calendar and force yourself to stay on that. And Sabbath can look like anything, but typically it's a 24-hour period, right? It's one day out of the week, and sometimes it can be from 6 p.m. to 6 p.m. It can be that. So a lot of times I know people that are in ministry have work to do on Sundays. So 6 p.m. on Sunday to 6 p.m. on Monday. There's other people that take Saturday as their Sabbath. There are other people, and there's some people that say Sabbath is supposed to be on Saturday or whatever. But for ministry people, for me, I like to take Monday. Right? Monday is my Sabbath, and I don't do it all the time. So I'm preaching to myself. Yeah. But another way to do it is moments in the day, and there's something called the daily office that is a very, very strong tool. And typically with the daily office is it's 2 or 3 times a day of a small amount of meditation, silent time, and devotion. And so the struggle with just a devotion, just sitting down and reading a devotion, and being done with it is that you've gained knowledge, but you haven't applied it. And so the important thing is to take, this is the ideal situation, would be in the morning, get up 10 minutes earlier, 15 minutes earlier. Sit down, silence yourself. Sit down and sit in silence, because what does it say about the voice of God? It wasn't found in the whirlwind, it wasn't found in the storm, it wasn't found in the earthquake, it was found where? A still, small voice. And that actually translates to found in the silence. And if you cannot sit in silence with nothing else, not reading anything, nothing, then there's a problem with your soul. If you can't sit in silence. So practice it. And I promise you, it's not easy when you first do it. Just literally sit down for 2 minutes.
Yeah,
That's
like
literally,
forever.
like, this is what I did when I first started. I would put a timer, and I'd say, set a timer for 2 minutes, because I needed to talk to somebody. And so I would set it down for 2 minutes and just sit in silence and breathe. And that was the hardest 2 minutes of my life, because my brain goes in 50 different directions.
Feels like
but
forever.
again, in those kinds of situations, have grace for yourself and recognize that that 120 seconds is 120 opportunities for you to bring your thoughts back into captivity. And so when you go off and start thinking about something, that's okay. That's no big deal. Just bring your thoughts back into captivity. The Bible even says that, doesn't it? It says, bring your thoughts into captivity under the obedience of God. And so if you do that, just take 2 minutes. Take 2 minutes. Sit, do that. Read a little bit of scripture. Maybe read a short devotional. Meditate on that. Take a moment. What are you trying to say to me in this moment? And then do another 2 minutes of just sitting in silence and meditating on what you just heard and what you just read. And literally 5-7 minutes, maybe 10 minutes at the most, at the beginning of your day, will change the way that you see things during that day. And then if you can take another one of those moments for lunch, or even at the end of the day in the evening time, do that. Those are mini Sabbaths, but they're a reminder. What it does for you is that it brings you back to this place in your head that says, my ultimate relationship is God. And the person that I need to hear most from during the day is God. Yeah. So you're going from mountain to mountain during that day. So take those little moments, and then when you can do the Sabbath on the seventh day, do the Sabbath on the seventh day. Rest, recuperate, enjoy yourself, have fun. It's not just a day off, though. It's a reminder. Yeah. It's a reminder that God is in control. So that's a practical tip. Yeah. Pastor?
Well, I just want to jump up here because, first of all, thank you guys. Y'all are amazing. And we could do this all day long, because I think each one of these headliners are an entire study within themselves.
Yeah. It's a whole session by itself.
But you guys said a couple of things. You said a lot of things, but a couple of things that have leaped into us with the harsh reality that we all need to be better disciples and tremendous students of the time that we live in. All of this is woven together in a cylindrical circle of unending love that God has given us. So the Sabbath is purely built on the economy of trust and tithe. Mm-hmm. God first. God first in our thoughts. God first in our rest.
First fruits.
First fruits. Mm-hmm. God is Lord, right? Jesus is Lord over my life. Everybody says that?
Yeah.
But we do not superintend and structure our lives many times like He is. Yeah. So you have that, and then you said something that was just profound. You talked about this idea of not, how did you say it, in boundaries. You are not responsible for
responsible to
someone, but you're responsible to them. Yeah. And that changes everything, every dynamic you have about the inner man and the superintendency of your soul, because everything in this world wants to attach itself to us and make us feel like we're responsible for their behavior. Yeah. Right?
Yep.
And it wants us, I'm going to sign up and you're going to be my counselor. And then next week when I act like a fool, it's your fault. Right? She barely knows my address. She didn't even get my social security number.
Right.
But just because I have a relationship with her, she now has a fiduciary responsibility for my behavior. And that's the whole world is trying to transmit that and transact that into our emotions and our spirits, and especially our children and our family members. If everybody can make you feel responsible for them, then everything in your life that is energetic and a respite and a rest, it drains the life out of you.
Yep.
But if we get back and get centered in the reality, I'm not responsible for them, I'm responsible to them. I think that's a liberating statement.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. And I, as a parent, there is a short period of time where you are responsible for, right? But there's that age of accountability where they get to the point where they understand the right things. Then it shifts from that responsibility for. So the only person that you truly are responsible for is yourself at that point, and only responsible to the others.
So how many of you enjoyed this? Praise God. Any questions? Any questions? Questions? No questions? Nobody's going to say a word.
Nobody's saying a word.
Thank y'all so much for just
Nobody's
being
gonna say a
here,
word.
for paying attention to us.
Listen, you said something about you didn't have a ministry place right now. So we could do this at 9 o'clock every Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Mental gymnastics.
That's so funny. No,
We
that's
could
really
run at 8,
Yeah.
and then we could think at 9.
Think at 9.
So let's give Brittany a big hand and thank her for being with us. This is extraordinary, and I'm really being serious. I was being facetious, but I am serious about we need to do much more of this. And we need to get comfortable in having some sort of conversation, even if it's a small group setting, where we are really open about the challenges of our time. I think that when we're honest and we're just transparent with the reality that these are unusual times that we live in. I loved what you said about the realities of social media and just the stress that it places upon our psyche and our soul. These are very real things that we need to be able to at least talk about and have a conversation about, whether we agree with them or not. And the other thing that was touched on that is so needed for all of us is loving people with different opinions. That's what I love about the Church of Champions. I am the minority.
That's good.
You know, in my mind, I'm the minority. Everyone else should be able to have a different opinion. And I should know my position well enough to articulate it without offending somebody.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that?
Absolutely.
That's kind of the trade of a lawyer.
Yeah.
There you go.
Argue for your position
Yeah.
and sway and convince a jury, right?
Right.
And we've lost that. We don't want to have any kind of conversation with people that have a difference of opinion or may not have any opinion. We don't want to persuade them, and that's what Paul did with the gospel. He went about persuading people to the good news of Jesus Christ. So I think we have to go into conversations and realities and lifestyles. We should be, of all people, we should know we're expecting people not to have the same view of ours as ours and the same position as ours. That doesn't make them our enemy. No. That makes them our opportunity.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely.
So I love you. I thank God for you. We would love to keep you here all day and just have this conversation. I think this has been amazing. Let's give Brittany and Richie one more big hand. Thank you for coming.
Yes,
This has been
thank y'all so
amazing.
much.
This has been amazing.